Maybe someone will doubt what I'm about to tell here, and I understand. If it were someone else in my place, I wouldn't believe it either. Even now, years later, I still try to understand if that was real, or if I was just tired, or imagining things. But to be honest, I can't shake the feeling that it really happened, and that there's something wrong with that place to this day. It was fall, early evening. I was getting ready to go to church. I avoid talking about religion because I know everyone has their own opinion, but this is part of the story, so I need to mention it. That night, there was going to be a special mass, and pretty much everyone in the neighborhood would be there. Since I had a small role in the church, nothing major, I helped with some things during the events. My job was to arrive early to help organize everything. It was around 7 in the evening when I left home. I lived 2 blocks from the church. It was easy to walk, and I always did. The streets were empty, as usual at that time, especially during the week. I walked slowly, thinking about how long the night was going to be. The late-night masses always left me tired, but I liked the peace the place brought. Only that night, things didn't go as expected. When I turned the last corner, already close to the church, I saw something that didn't make sense at the time. The priest of our parish was standing right at the entrance, but he didn't seem normal. He was walking in circles, very slowly, like he was lost. I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk and watched, trying to understand what he was doing. The priest had always been a calm, serious, dedicated man. So seeing him like that, aimlessly, was weird. I took a few more steps, thinking about getting closer. But something made me stop. I can't explain why, but I just stayed there watching from a distance. He kept walking in circles, always in the same spot, in front of the church door, as if he was stuck in some kind of loop. He didn't seem to see me, and the church door behind him was closed. As I watched, trying to make sense of it, I noticed he started doing something even stranger. He stopped suddenly, standing completely still for a few seconds. Then, very slowly, he began to rise off the ground. Not much, just a few inches, but enough to make me doubt what I was seeing. He stayed there, suspended, floating in the same spot where he had been walking before. There was no one around, no wind, nothing that could explain that. I blinked a few times, rubbed my eyes, trying to see if I was imagining things, but the scene stayed the same. The priest standing in the air as if it was the most normal thing in the world. And the strangest part of all was that he didn't seem to have any expression on his face. It was like he wasn't really there, like he was disconnected from everything around him. That's when I felt like I shouldn't be there. Without thinking much, I turned around and started walking back home. I didn't run, but I didn't go slow either. I just knew I needed to get away from that. I didn't want to look back. When I got home, I closed the door and stood in the living room, trying to understand what had just happened. I thought about calling someone, telling them what I had seen, but at the time I gave up. It didn't make sense, you know? How was I going to explain that to someone without sounding crazy? So, I let it go. I sat on the couch and stayed there for a while, trying to get my thoughts in order. The mass, the people going to church, the priest, none of it made sense. But for some reason, I knew I couldn't go back there that night. Something told me it was better to stay away. The next day, people started talking about how the priest had fallen ill during the mass, but no one seemed to know what really happened before it started. No one mentioned anything about him walking in circles or levitating in front of the church. It seemed that, for everyone else, the night had been normal, except for him passing out later. I even tried to discreetly ask some people who were there, but no one had noticed anything strange before he got sick. I never spoke about it to anyone after that. I never went back to that church either. It might have been a mistake, or maybe there's something more going on there, something no one else saw. To this day, I don't know exactly what happened that night. I just know that after that, I couldn't trust that place anymore. And that's it. I wish I had a better explanation. I wish I could say that I figured out what really happened, or that everything ended well. But the truth is, I just don't know. I only know that after that night, I was never the same. Something inside me changed, and I can't go back to how I was before. It was a fall night, and I was at home talking on the phone with my girlfriend. You know how it is. We don't do video calls and stuff like that, because I come from a humble family. For me, just the phone is more than enough. We were talking about how our day went, those usual conversations. While she was talking, I felt like going over to her house. It was already around 8 p.m., but that was never a problem for me. I lived about 20 minutes away on foot, so going out at that time was no big deal. I grabbed a jacket and left. The weather was kinda chilly, nothing unusual. The street was quiet, as always. But after walking for a bit, I started feeling strange. It felt like someone was behind me. I looked over my shoulder, but didn't see anyone. I thought it was just in my head, so I kept walking. The street I took to get to her house had lots of trees. It was one of those streets that get kinda dark at night because of the tree shadows. I'd always walked through there without any problem, but not that night. Then out of nowhere I heard a crack, like when someone steps on a dry branch. My body shivered for a second, and I quickly turned around. But again, no one was there. I tried to convince myself it was just the wind, or maybe an animal, I don't know. Still, my heart started beating faster. I picked up my pace, wanting to get to her house fast. After about 15 minutes, I could already see her house in the distance. That gave me some comfort. But before I got closer, I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket. It was my girlfriend calling. I thought it was strange, because we had just talked. I answered, and the first thing she asked was, "Who's that man behind you?" Right then, my body froze. I turned around, trying to see what she was talking about, but all I saw was the low bushes swaying. It looked like someone had just run into them, but I couldn't see anyone. Then, without thinking twice, I ran to her house. When I got to the door, she was already there, looking a bit scared. "There was a man behind you. I saw him from the window. He went into the bushes over there," she said, pointing to the spot where I saw the grass move. I didn't know what to say. Who was that guy? What did he want? Why was he following me? I had no answers for any of that. I just knew that at that moment, I didn't want to go back home. Her mom noticed I was a bit shaken and told me to stay the night. I agreed right away. I slept in the guest room, but honestly, I barely slept. The whole time, I kept thinking about what my girlfriend had seen. Was it just paranoia? Maybe I was so focused on getting to her house that I didn't even notice someone following me. Or worse, maybe I really had walked right past someone who was watching me. The next morning, after a bland breakfast, I decided to head back home. It was daylight, and I tried convincing myself it was all just a coincidence. But to be honest, the walk back was a lot quicker than the walk there. I had that uneasy feeling that at any moment I might see someone coming out of the bushes or hear footsteps behind me. Nothing happened, but I didn't relax until I got home. After that, I kept replaying the story in my head for days. My girlfriend was also a bit disturbed, saying she was sure of what she saw. We even avoided talking about it much. But it was clear we were both suspicious. Who was that guy? Could he have been someone from around there? A neighbor? Or just some weirdo passing by? As the weeks went by, life returned to normal. I stopped thinking about it so much. But every time I had to walk down that street at night, my body stayed on high alert. It's funny how these things mess with you. You try to move on, but there's always that little bit of fear in the back of your mind. A strange noise, a different shadow, and boom, it all comes rushing back. I never saw anything strange on that street again, but I was never as relaxed walking there at night. What happened that night is still a mystery. Maybe it was just a coincidence, or maybe someone really was following me. But what bugs me the most is that, to this day, my girlfriend insists she clearly saw someone behind me. And what if she was right?